at some point, Bubble is so advanced you can code almost anything with clicks and drags that you could typing. Why is it that that format you think isn't as intimidating to users? Like, what makes it more accessible to code through like a visual programming interface versus
well, so first of all, I mean,
text editor?
we only see like 1 or 2% of our users actually typing code on Bubble. So for most of our users, what they interact with is a visual interface. And why is it less intimidating? Well, because it's clicks. I mean, it's because it's visual. It presents information in a way that is natural to us. While if you type code, you write text in a way that is parsable by the computer. Like fundamentally, that's the big difference here. So very practically, what that means in Bubble is that if you want to create a workflow when the user clicks on a button, you want to save the apartment in the database and then send an email. Well, in Bubble is going to read exactly as when the button save is clicked, create a new apartment, send an email, change the page. So it's much easier to parse. You don't make syntax mistakes. You can still make mistakes in Bubble, but not syntax mistake, which are, like a typo. If you type then, but you misspell the N and type an M, it's not going to work, right? That's the kind of things that is impossible with Bubble. So the level of details it requires is much lower. At the same time, you still need to think carefully about what you're trying to do, but it forces you to actually think about the interesting things. One of the things that I say a lot about Bubble compared to other no-code tools actually is that the reason why we call Bubble like a visual programming tool is because you can really do mistakes when you build your app. If you don't put your workflow actions in the right order, you're not going to have the expected behavior. And so you're going to have to iterate on this. But that forces you to think at the interesting level, which is what do I want to happen when the user interacts with my app? You don't start thinking, oh shit, I forgot the comma here or the semicolon. That's what is intimidating to people, because you end up, very often in the early years of your programming life, if you're coding, spending sometimes literally 1 hour to just realize you forgot a comma somewhere. That is something that works with some people. That's why, some people love coding. I mean, at the teenage years, you have some type of profiles, and I was one of them, that would really much enjoy the brain teaser aspect that it has. But I think for 1% that enjoys it, 9 people in high school would be like, hey, I have better things to do with my life. I'd rather go play with my friends. Education has been always a pretty big angle for us. So I was saying earlier, we did our pilot at the HBS, like Harvard Business School, to get our first users. But we start having more and more high schools actually using us. Not necessarily to tell their students they should start companies. I mean, I think honestly, when you're in high school, you have better things to do than starting companies, but to teach programming thinking, which is a very interesting concept, I think, which is, which we should train everyone. I'm very much against the idea that we should teach everyone to learn how to code, because I think for the reason I just talked about, it is tedious and it might actually even have bad side effects, in the sense that it might actually make some people think they're not made for technology, which I think really in 2019, you can't afford being not okay with technology. But programming thinking is more, okay, how do I think in a structured way of, which information do I need to save? What happens when the user clicks on this button? What happens if he clicks on this button, but he's not logged out? And thinking this kind of like flow chart thinking, which is super useful, by the way, not just to build products. I mean, it's also useful if you are trying to work on an assembly line as a manager or something. You need to think very structured, in a very structured way on everything that's going on. And Bubble is a great tool for that. So it forces you to think at that level without worrying about, again, the commas that's missing. That's really, I mean, it's really 1970s, It shouldn't be like that in 2020.